The rain hammered the tin roof of the old Harper barn like 1,000 accusations, each drop a reminder of the life Elsie had dared to dream. "Marry me, Clara," she whispered, her voice breaking against the thunder, the silver ring trembling in her outstretched palm like a fragile vow. But Clara's eyes, those eyes that had once pulled her into sun-dappled fields of wild azaleas, now clouded with the weight of Monroe's unyielding gaze, the town that birthed them both, and would bury their secrets if they dared breathe them aloud. Elsie Harper had always known love in Monroe was a fragile thing, wrapped in Spanish moss and the polite venom of Sunday suppers. Born to a family of faded cotton mill workers on the outskirts of this Georgia town, where the Savannah River whispered old grudges through the live oaks, she learned early that dreams were for the wealthy, the ones who summered in Charleston and wintered in Atlanta high-rises. Her mother, a seamstress with hands calloused from mending the town's illusions, had taught her to stitch wounds without a word. "Keep your head down, Elsie girl, and the world won't notice your scars." But scars were all Elsie carried now, etched deep from the summer she turned 22, when Clara Beaumont first crossed her path at the annual Harvest Moon Festival. Clara was everything Monroe revered, heir to the Beaumont textile fortune, with a laugh that echoed like wind chimes in the family's antebellum estate on Elm Street. She moved through the world like she owned the light, her presence a soft rebellion against the town's rigid hierarchies. Elsie remembered the exact moment, the Ferris wheel creaking to a halt at the fairground's edge, the air thick with fried dough and the faint rot of the river. Clara, in a sundress the color of ripe peaches, had leaned over from the gondola above, her hair tumbling like Spanish moss, and said, "You look like you've got stories that could outrun this wheel." It was a simple line tossed like a lifeline, but to Elsie it was ignition. They met in stolen afternoons, away from the Beaumonts' manicured lawns and the Harper Mills' choking dust. Clara would drive her old Ford pickup down to the river bends, where the water ran lazy and brown, and they'd talk for hours, about books smuggled from the library, dreams of escaping to New York where no one cared who loved whom, and the quiet terror of their family's expectations. Clara spoke of her father's iron rule, the Beaumont legacy that demanded a son-in-law from old money, a union to shore up the crumbling empire. Elsie shared her own burdens. The mill closing, her brother's drinking, the way poverty clung like kudzu. In those moments, with the sun dipping low and painting the water gold, love felt possible. It bloomed fierce and unspoken, in the brush of fingers over shared cigarettes, in the way Clara's head would rest on Elsie's shoulder during late-night drives, the radio crooning Patsy Cline. But Monroe had eyes everywhere. Whispers started small, a maid at the Beaumont house catching them in the garden, hands lingering too long over a shared lemonade. Then the invitations dried up. Clara's mother, Evelyn, with her pearl necklaces and Bible study circles, began hosting ladies' luncheons that excluded the Harpers. Elsie felt it like a slow strangling, yet Clara pulled her closer, defiant in the dark. "They're ghosts of the past," she'd say, tracing patterns on Elsie's palm under the covers of the old barn loft. "We make our own future." That future Elsie tried to forge on a stormy August night, 3 years into their hidden world. The proposal had been building in her chest like a hymn, the ring a family heirloom from her grandmother, a simple silver band with a single emerald, cut from a stone she'd found as a child in the riverbed. She'd saved every penny from her shifts at the local diner, polishing it until it gleamed like a promise. They were in the barn, rain lashing the world outside, when she dropped to one knee amid the hay bales, heart pounding louder than the storm. "Marry me, Clara." The words hung heavy, sacred. Clara's face crumpled, not with joy, but with a sorrow so profound it stole Elsie's breath. She sank to the floor beside her, cupping Elsie's face, tears mingling with the rain dripping through the cracks. "Oh God, Elsie. I want to. More than anything." But then the flood. Her father's ultimatum, the family's bankruptcy looming unless she wed Thomas Riley, the son of Atlanta bankers. "It's not just money. It's everything they've built. If I say yes to you, they say no to us both. And Monroe? It would devour you alive." The rejection landed like a slap from the thunder gods. Elsie pulled away, the ring slipping from her fingers to roll into the shadows. "So I'm the secret you keep until it's convenient to forget?" Her voice cracked, raw with the betrayal of love turned cowardice. Clara sobbed, reaching for her, but Elsie was already standing, the barn door slamming behind her like a final judgment. She ran into the night, the rain washing away the salt of her tears, the emerald ring left behind in the mud. In the weeks that followed, Monroe closed ranks. Clara vanished into European tours that smelled of exile. Elsie packed a single bag and boarded a Greyhound to Atlanta, then north to New York, where the city's clamor drowned the ache. She waitressed in Hell's Kitchen dives, her southern drawl earning tips and wary glances. Nights blurred into journals filled with unsent letters to Clara, pages of what-ifs stained with cheap wine. But survival sharpened her. She enrolled in night classes at community college, discovering a knack for events, for turning chaos into elegance. Weddings, she learned, were America's great theater. Vows exchanged under chandeliers, families pretending at unity while secrets festered beneath taffeta. By 27, Elsie Harper Events was a whisper in the industry, her portfolio a gallery of reclaimed dreams. She planned for the elite, tech moguls in the Hamptons, diplomats in D.C., infusing each with a touch of southern grace, wildflowers amid the orchids. Yet the ring stayed with her, tucked in a velvet pouch, a talisman of what was lost. She dated sparingly, women who saw her fire but not her frost. None lingered. Love, she decided, was a luxury for those unscarred by small towns. Fate, cruel as ever, circled back on a crisp October morning 5 years later. The email arrived in her inbox amid queries for galas and galas. Beaumont Riley Nuptials, Monroe, Georgia. The bride, Clara Beaumont. Groom, Thomas Riley. Venue, the Beaumont estate. Elsie's coffee turned to ash in her mouth. She stared at the screen, the years collapsing like a house of cards. Clara, marrying the man who'd been her escape hatch. And now hiring her? The attachment was a mood board. Magnolias, emerald accents, a color palette of river mud and sunset gold. Subtle or a taunt? She should have deleted it. Forwarded it to an associate. But the pull was magnetic. A moth to the flame of unfinished business. Consider it closure, she told her reflection in the Manhattan high-rise mirror, the city skyline indifferent behind her. She booked the flight to Savannah, the ring pouch slipping into her carry-on like contraband. Monroe awaited unchanged. The same sagging porches, the river still murmuring lies. As the cab wound through live oaks draped in resurrection fern, Elsie felt the old wounds stir. This wasn't revenge. It was reckoning. The Beaumont estate loomed like a southern belle past her prime. Columns flaking paint, gardens overgrown with heirloom roses. Evelyn Beaumont greeted her at the door, pearls gleaming like armor, her smile as tight as a corset. Miss Harper, we've heard such glowing things. The pause hung loaded, a nod to the town's long memory. Inside, the foyer echoed with preparations. Florists rustling azaleas, caterers murmuring over bourbon glazes. And then Clara. She emerged from the parlor, a vision in linen slacks and a silk blouse the color of storm clouds, her hair pinned in loose waves. Time had honed her, cheekbones sharper, eyes deeper with the weight of compromises. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to that gaze locking on Elsie's, recognition flashing like lightning over the river. Elsie, Clara breathed, the name a ghost between them. No embrace, no outburst. Just a hand extended, professional, trembling at the edges. Thank you for coming. Thomas is eager to meet you. Thomas Riley proved the archetype. Broad-shouldered, Ivy League polish, a laugh that boomed like stock market gains. He shook Elsie's hand with the vigor of a man unused to doubt, his Atlanta drawl laced with entitlement. Heard you're the wizard behind that Vanderbilt bash. Make ours legendary. Clara deserves the stars. Clara stood beside him, her smile a masterpiece of restraint, but Elsie caught the flicker. A glance at her left hand, bare save for the planner's notebook. They toured the grounds under a tentative sun, mapping aisles of white chairs amid the oaks, envisioning strings of lights like fireflies at dusk. Clara contributed sparingly. Something intimate, perhaps, with the river in view. Her voice steady, but Elsie felt the undercurrent. The way her fingers twisted a napkin when Evelyn hovered near. Lunch was served on the veranda. Shrimp and grits, sweet tea sweating in mason jars, the air humming with cicadas. Thomas dominated, spinning tales of mergers and sailboats, while Evelyn probed Elsie's credentials with veiled barbs. New York's a far cry from here. Do you miss the simplicity? Elsie met her eyes coolly. Simplicity has its price, Mrs. Beaumont. Clara choked on her tea, coughing delicately, and under the table their knees brushed. Accident or echo? The afternoon blurred into sketches. Emerald linens nodding to the ring's stone, wildflowers for the bouquets to honor untamed roots. As dusk fell, Thomas excused himself for a call, Evelyn retreating to her sewing circle. Alone in the garden, Clara turned to Elsie, the magnolias heavy with scent. You kept it, Clara said softly, nodding to the velvet pouch peeking from Elsie's bag, glimpsed during the tour. Elsie's heart stuttered. She'd meant to hide it better. Why? Because some promises don't dissolve in rain. The words escaped, laced with the bitterness of that barn night. Clara's face shadowed, petals of regret blooming in her eyes. Elsie, that night, I was a coward. Father had the papers on the table, bankruptcy, disgrace. I thought marrying Thomas would buy us time, space to breathe. Time for what? For you to play the dutiful daughter while I faded into the mill dust. Elsie's voice rose, the garden walls closing in. A gardener paused, rake in hand, before vanishing like smoke. Clara stepped closer, the air between them electric, charged with the unsaid. I never stopped loving you. Every letter I burned, every lie I told myself, it was to survive this place. But seeing you here, it's like waking from a fever dream. The confession hung, fragile as the Spanish moss overhead. Elsie wanted to rage, to shatter the moment with truths long buried. Instead, she pulled the ring from its pouch, holding it between them like a verdict. Then wear it. Not for Thomas. For us. Clara's hand hovered, inches from the silver, her breath catching on the precipice. But footsteps echoed from the house. Evelyn's voice calling. Clara withdrew, the mask slipping back into place. We can't. Not yet. As Elsie pocketed the ring, the river whispered its ancient warning. In Monroe, love was a debt paid in silence. The days blurred into a fevered rhythm at the Beaumont estate, each consultation a tightrope over the abyss of their shared history. Elsie threw herself into the work with the precision of a surgeon dissecting a heart still beating. Venue layout sketched on linen paper, playlists curated to evoke sunsets over the savannah, menus blending low-country soul with Riley sophistication. Thomas hovered like a benevolent storm cloud, approving every flourish with a clap on the back, oblivious to the undercurrent swirling beneath his feet. You're a miracle worker, Harper, he'd say, clinking glasses of bourbon neat. Clara's glowing already. Glowing. The word twisted in Elsie's gut like a thorn from the rose arbor. Clara did glow in stolen moments, laughing at a florist's mishap, her head thrown back in genuine mirth, or lingering over fabric swatches, fingers tracing silk as if mapping old paths. But at night, alone in the guest cottage Evelyn had grudgingly provided, a clapboard relic with creaking floors and ghosts in the wallpaper, Elsie paced, the ring heavy in her pocket. Sleep evaded her, chased away by memories. Clara's breath warm against her neck in the barn loft, the way she'd murmur poetry from dog-eared frost volumes. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, as if their love were a choice, not a cage. Monroe too conspired against rest. The town pulsed with its own lifeblood. Gossip vines twisting through the diner where Elsie grabbed coffee, old mill workers nodding recognition laced with pity. Heard the Beaumont girls tying the knot up yonder. Mabel at the counter drawled, pouring Elsie's black brew with a knowing wink. Fancy planner from the big city, huh? Small world. Elsie forced a smile, tipping extra, but the drive back through oak-lined streets felt like traversing a minefield. Billboards for Riley Textiles loomed, Clara's family legacy now fused with her fiancé's empire. A merger of fortunes that mocked the poverty Elsie had fled. By midweek, the rehearsals began in earnest. The estate transformed. Tents erected like white sails against the river breeze. Chairs aligned in precise rows facing an arch of wrought iron and climbing jasmine. Elsie directed with quiet authority, her clipboard a shield, but Clara's presence unraveled her thread by thread. During a walkthrough as they tested the aisle's length, Clara in a proxy veil of tulle, Thomas joking about cold feet, their eyes met across the expanse. Time fractured. Elsie saw not the bride-to-be, but the girl who'd once danced barefoot in the river shallows, water beating on her skin like diamonds. Clara faltered mid-step, the veil catching on a thorn, And in the hush she whispered, "Help me." It was a plea or a trap. Elsie crossed the grass in 3 strides, steadying her with hands that remembered every curve. Up close, Clara smelled of lavender and regret, her pulse racing under Elsie's thumb. "This isn't you," Elsie murmured, voice low for their ears alone. "The veil, the arch, it's a costume for their play." Clara's eyes brimmed, but Thomas's laugh boomed from the sidelines, shattering the intimacy. "Darling, you're a vision. Elsie's got the magic touch." That evening, as the crew dispersed and the sun bled orange into the river, Clara found Elsie by the boathouse, sketching final notes under a lantern's glow. The air hung heavy with marsh salt and unspoken sins. "Walk with me," Clara said, not a request. They slipped down the path to the water's edge, where willows wept into the current, the town lights twinkling distant and judgmental across the way. Silence stretched, broken only by the lap of waves against the dock. "I kept your letters," Clara confessed finally, sinking onto a weathered bench. "All of them. Hidden in the attic, tied with that blue ribbon you sent from New York." Elsie's pen stilled, ink blotting the page like a bruise. She'd written dozens in those first years. Raw confessions of city nights, pleas for forgiveness she didn't owe, maps of a life they might have built. Burning them had been her ritual. Ashes scattered in Central Park. Why tell me now? With him upstairs, polishing his vows. Clara's laugh was bitter, a sound like breaking glass. "Because every choice since that rain was a lie to myself. Thomas is safe. Steady job, family approval. A house in Buckhead with a yard for the kids they all expect. But safe isn't love. It's survival." She reached for Elsie's hand, tentative, and this time, Elsie didn't pull away. Their fingers laced, rough callus against soft palm. "A bridge over the chasm. I rejected you to save us from scandal. Father threatened disinheritance, the church ladies their sermons. Monroe would have painted you as the villain. The poor girl corrupting the heiress. I thought time would heal it. Instead it festered." The river murmured agreement, carrying echoes of enslaved whispers from centuries past, of loves forbidden by ledgers and laws. Elsie felt the weight of it all, the Beaumont fortune built on bent backs, the Harper grit forged in the same fires. And now? With the invitations out, the cake tears rising. Clara leaned in, forehead to Elsie's, breath mingling like smoke. "Now I wonder if freedom's worth the wreckage." They kissed then, slow and searing, the lantern flickering like a heartbeat. It was resurrection and ruin, Clara's lips tasting of sweet tea and salt tears, her hands clutching Elsie's shirt as if anchoring to a raft in floodwaters. Time dissolved, the boathouse faded. For a stolen eternity, Monroe's chains loosened. But reality intruded. A car engine rumbling up the drive, headlights slicing the dark. Clara broke away, eyes wild. "Meet me tomorrow. The old mill. Midnight." Elsie nodded, the ring burning in her pocket like a coal. As Clara vanished into the shadows, Elsie lingered by the water, the current pulling at her resolve. Dawn would bring fittings, floral deliveries, Evelyn's eagle eye. But midnight loomed, a horizon of reckoning. In her cottage later, she penned notes for the ceremony, unity candles, string quartets. But her mind wandered to escape routes. A dawn flight to Vermont, where she'd once planned a elopement for 2 women who'd burned their bridges. Could Clara cross that line? Or would loyalty, that cruelest of anchors, drag them under? The next day dawned muggy, the estate abuzz with vendors. Thomas arrived early, bearing blueprints for a honeymoon villa in Tuscany, his enthusiasm a battering ram against Elsie's composure. "Clara's always dreamed of Italy," he said, unrolling the plans over breakfast pecan waffles. "Art, wine, the works." Clara, across the table, met Elsie's gaze with a flicker of apology, her fork scraping porcelain like nails on chalk. Evelyn presided, dispensing directives. "No modern nonsense, dear. Keep it traditional, pearls, not those flashy gems." Emeralds, Elsie thought, the word a silent rebellion. The morning devolved into chaos. A storm warning from the coast, forcing indoor contingencies. A caterer balking at vegan options for Thomas's hippie sister. Through it all, Elsie orchestrated with steel calm, her southern lilt soothing frayed tempers. But Clara's distraction was palpable. Fumbled measurements, absent stares toward the river. At lunch, as Thomas stepped away for a golf call, Evelyn cornered her daughter in the sunroom, voices carrying through cracked French doors. It's unbecoming, Clara. Mooning about like a schoolgirl. Thomas notices. Evelyn's tone was honey over venom. And that Harper girl stirring old pots. I remember the rumors. Clara's reply was a whip crack. Rumors are Monroe's currency, Mother. Maybe it's time we bankrupted them. Silence followed, thick as fog. Elsie, pretending to adjust drapes nearby, felt her pulse thunder. The gauntlet thrown. Midnight found her at the old Harper mill. A skeletal ruin on the town's edge, windows shattered like broken promises, vines claiming the brick. The moon hung low, silvering the weeds. Clara arrived in her truck, headlights cutting the dark before winking out. She emerged wrapped in a shawl, eyes searching until they found Elsie leaning against a rusted beam. No words at first, just the pull, inevitable as gravity. They met in the doorway, bodies colliding in a tangle of need and nostalgia. The mill's dust motes dancing in moonlight like fireflies at their first festival. Inside, amid the ghosts of looms long silent, they unraveled. Clara's hands mapped Elsie's back, tracing scars from mill work and city falls. I dreamed of this, she gasped against Elsie's throat. Every night in that big bed, Thomas snoring beside me. Elsie silenced her with a kiss, fierce, claiming what time had stolen. They sank to the floor on a bed of fallen leaves, the ring pressed between them like a vow renewed. Lovemaking in the mill was sacrament and sacrilege. Slow explorations yielding to urgency, whispers of stay and run mingling with the wind through cracks. After, spent and shivering, they lay entwined, Clara's head on Elsie's chest. The wedding's in 10 days, she said, voice small. Cancel it. Elsie held her breath, the question a precipice. Clara lifted her head, eyes gleaming with uncharted resolve. Yes, but not without facing them. Father, mother, the whole rotten town. For us. Dawn crept in, painting the ruins gold. They parted with a promise, the ring on Clara's finger by week's end, consequences be damned. But Monroe, ever vigilant, had other plans. The week unfurled like a storm gathering over the low country, thunderheads building in the spaces between polite smiles and perfunctory meetings. Elsie navigated the estate's escalating frenzy with the detachment of a general at war, coordinating string quartets from Atlanta, sourcing heirloom linens from Charleston weavers, even charming the local preacher into a sermon on eternal bonds that twisted like a knife in her ribs. Thomas, buoyant on bridal bliss, pulled her aside one afternoon amid the rose arbor, his face ruddy from midday scotch. Your family now, Elsie. Whatever you need, hell, the Rylas have connections coast to coast. His gratitude was genuine, a man's easy confidence in a world bent to his will, and it only sharpened the blade of irony. Clara, meanwhile, wore her rebellion like a hidden locket, outwardly the poised bride, selecting china patterns with Evelyn's nods, but in fleeting asides, her hand brushing Elsie's with electric intent. The ring's in my jewelry box, she'd murmur during a cake tasting, fork hovering over tiers of lemon chiffon. Waiting. Those words fueled Elsie's fire, a quiet blaze against the chill of doubt. Yet sleep brought visions. The barn's rain, Clara's tears, the river swallowing secrets whole. Was this redemption, or just another layer of the town's intricate deceit? Evelyn Beaumont, that pearl-clutched sentinel, grew bolder in her surveillance. She appeared unannounced at fittings, her perfume a cloying fog of gardenia and suspicion. Such a lovely veil, dear, she'd coo, eyes flicking to Elsie like a hawk spotting prey. One evening as Clara tried on the gown, a cascade of ivory silk evoking magnolia petals, Evelyn lingered, her gaze dissecting the mirror's reflection. Tradition matters, Clara. It's the thread holding us to something larger. Clara, swathed in lace, met her mother's eyes in the glass, a spark of defiance flickering. Or the noose, mother? The room iced over. The seamstress busied herself with pins. Elsie, adjusting the train, felt the tremor in Clara's stance, a fault line ready to crack. Word spread, as it does in towns like Monroe, where privacy is a myth peddled to tourists. At the general store for last-minute ribbon spools, the clerk, an old Harper neighbor, leaned in with a conspiratorial hush. Heard you're planning the wedding of the century. Beaumont's pulling out all stops. But between us, that Clara always had a wild streak. Like her grandmother, God rest her. The implication lingered, laced with the town's folklore of forbidden dalliances, suicides veiled as accidents. Elsie paid quickly, escaping to her truck, the engine's roar drowning the echo. Clara's family history was a tapestry of silences. Great-aunts shipped to asylums, uncles lost to duels over honor. To defy it now was to unravel the cloth. Midweek brought the rehearsal dinner, a lavish affair at the country club overlooking the river. Lanterns strung like fallen stars, tables groaning under crab legs and pecan pie. The guest list read like Monroe's social ledger. Riley kin from Atlanta, Beaumont cousins from Savannah, the mayor with his flask-warmed handshake. Elsie orchestrated from the shadows, cueing toasts and ensuring the bourbon flowed without excess. Thomas, dapper and seersucker, raised his glass with rehearsed charm. To Clara, my anchor in these shifting tides. The crowd applauded, but Elsie's eyes were on Clara, seated at the head table, her smile a porcelain mask cracking at the edges. During the dancing, a live band crooning standards under paper lanterns, Clara slipped away to the veranda, beckoning Elsie with a tilt of her chin. The night air was velvet, laced with jasmine and the faint brine of the marsh. I can't breathe in there, Clara said, leaning against the railing, the river a black ribbon below. All those faces judging before we've sinned. Elsie joined her, shoulders brushing, the proximity a balm and a burn. Then let's sin spectacularly. Call it off tonight. We'll drive north at dawn, Vermont, remember? The cabin I planned for that couple last summer. Clara turned, her face illuminated by lantern glow, eyes searching Elsie's like a map to buried treasure. And leave the wreckage? Father collapses, the business crumbles. Mother. She'd never forgive. But her hand found Elsie's waist, pulling her close, the music a distant pulse. They swayed, not to the band's rhythm but their own. A slow, defiant waltz that spoke of barn lofts and river dips. Forgiveness isn't theirs to withhold, Elsie whispered, lips grazing Clara's ear. It's ours to claim. The kiss ignited, hungry and heedless, Clara's back against the rail as if the river might sweep them away. Hands roamed with the urgency of thieves in the night, stealing touches long denied. But interruption came swift, a cough from the shadows. They sprang apart, hearts hammering to find not a guest, but young Lila, the caterer's daughter, wide-eyed with a tray of forgotten cordials. Sorry, ma'ams, the girl stammered, cheeks flaming before fleeing into the dark. Clara laughed shakily, smoothing her dress. Monroe's eyes again. Elsie pulled her into one last embrace. Then blind them tomorrow. Dawn brought no escape. Instead, confrontation brewed in the estate's sun-drenched kitchen, where Evelyn held court over coffee and cornbread. Thomas had departed early for a business jaunt to Savannah, leaving the women to nest. Clara entered composed, Elsie trailing with vendor confirmations. But Evelyn's eyes narrowed at her daughter's pallor. You look unwell, dear. This wedding business, it's taxing. Clara poured coffee, hands steady. Or liberating, mother. I've decided something. The room held its breath. Elsie froze by the window, the river mocking with its lazy flow. Clara set down her cup, voice clear as church bells. The wedding's off. Thomas deserves truth, not a stage. And I love someone else. Evelyn's face drained of color, pearls clattering as she rose. Nonsense. Premarital jitters. We'll call the doctor. But Clara cut her off, pulling the velvet pouch from her pocket, the ring retrieved in secret. She slid it onto her finger, emerald catching the light like a challenge. Not jitters. Clarity. Her name is Elsie. And it's been her all along. Pandemonium erupted. Evelyn's shriek pierced the air, hands clutching her chest in theatrical horror. You'd ruin us? For that. Her gaze speared Elsie, venom distilled from generations of guarded gates. Harper blood, poor, grasping, unnatural. The slurs landed like blows, but Elsie stepped forward, chin lifted. Unnatural's what you've built here, Mrs. Beaumont. Empires on broken backs, daughters bartered like stock. Clara moved to her side, their hands linking. A united front against the storm. Evelyn staggered back, summoning the maid for smelling salts, her world fracturing. Calls flew to Thomas, to the mayor, to the family lawyer. By noon the estate swarmed with Beaumont kin, a council of outrage in the parlor. Uncles thundering about legacy, aunts weeping into lace. Thomas arrived by helicopter, face thunderous, demanding explanations in the study. Clara faced him alone, Elsie's ring glinting as she recounted the truth. Not betrayal but awakening. I used you as a shield, Thomas. Forgive me. He stormed out, contract in hand, the merger dissolving like mist. Monroe ignited. Phones rang off hooks at the country club. The Gazette's editor penned frantic headlines. At the diner, Mabel served coffee with sidelong stares, whispers of scandal and disgrace trailing Elsie like smoke. She and Clara barricaded in the guest cottage, hands clasped over lukewarm tea, weathering the siege. They'll come around, Clara insisted, though her voice wavered. Or we leave. Together. But doubt crept in, Evelyn's disownment papers drawn, the mill workers' pity turning to scorn. Elsie felt the town's noose tightening, love's price etched in exile. Yet in the quiet hours as fireflies danced outside, they forged plans. A small ceremony in New York, Elsie's business as anchor, Clara's designs for sustainable textiles a new legacy. Hope flickered, fragile but fierce. Until the knock came at midnight, not ally but betrayer. The knock echoed through the cottage like a gavel falling, shattering the fragile peace Elsie and Clara had carved from the chaos. It was past midnight, the estate's lights dimmed to embers, Monroe's streets emptied under a canopy of stars indifferent to human folly. Clara rose from the settee, her silhouette framed in the doorway's glow. The emerald ring a sentinel on her finger. Elsie followed, pulse a war drum, expecting Evelyn's final salvo or Thomas's vengeful return. Instead, the door creaked open to reveal Lila, the caterer's girl, no older than 19, her face pale as moonlight, clutching a manila envelope like a talisman. Miss Clara, Miss Elsie, Lila whispered, eyes darting to the shadows as if pursued by ghosts. Mama said to bring this quick, before the dawn patrol starts sniffing. She thrust the envelope forward, thick with papers before vanishing into the night, her footsteps fading like a sigh. Clara's hands trembled as she slit the seal, contents spilling onto the oak table. Photographs grainy but damning. Snaps from the boathouse kiss, the mill embrace, pilfered by who knew whose lens. Accompanying notes typed anonymous. Monroe protects its own. Leave or these go to the Gazette. The Rylus. The churches. Betrayal's sting was visceral. A blade slipped between ribs. Clara sank into a chair. Photos scattering like fallen leaves. Lila's mother, she must have seen, told someone. The club, the rehearsal. Eyes everywhere. Her voice cracked, the weight of exposure crushing the defiance she'd worn like armor. Elsie gathered the images, her fingers steady despite the quake in her chest. Flames in the hearth devoured them one by one, curls of smoke carrying secrets skyward. They think shame will silence us? They've underestimated Southern stubbornness. But doubt festered. Dawn brought a town transformed, hostile glances at the post office, where Elsie collected final linens, voicemails from vendors withdrawing, citing scheduling conflicts. Evelyn's silence was thunderous, the estate's grand doors barred, a fortress against her daughter's delusion. Thomas, in a curt email forwarded by his lawyer, severed ties. No hard feelings, but the merger's dead. Suggest you both seek therapy. Clara read it aloud, her laugh hollow, echoing off the cottage walls. Therapy. As if love's a disorder to medicate. Isolation deepened the rift. Clara paced, torn between fury and flight, her sketches for ethical fabrics abandoned in favor of frantic calls to cousins who hung up mid-sentence. They're ashamed, she confessed one afternoon, rain pattering the tin roof like accusatory fingers. Of me. Of what I represent. A crack in the facade. Elsie drew her close, bodies fitting like puzzle pieces long separated. Then let's widen it. Pack tonight. New York waits, my apartment, the skyline as witness. Clara nodded against her shoulder, but her eyes held shadows, the pull of legacy a gravitational force. The breaking point came at Vespers in the old Presbyterian church on Magnolia Square, Monroe's heart, where baptisms and burials scripted the town's soul. Evelyn had summoned Clara there, a family reconciliation. The note read, neutral ground under stained glass and sermons. Against Elsie's protests, it's a trap, Clara insisted. One last stand. For closure if nothing else. Dressed in quiet rebellion, A linen shift, the ring gleaming. She entered the nave alone, pews echoing empty save for Evelyn, seated like a queen in exile, Bible open on her lap. Elsie waited outside, concealed in the cemetery's embrace, tombstones leaning like weary confidants under live oaks. The air hummed with cicadas' dirge, the river's murmur a distant lullaby. Minutes stretched to agony. Shadows lengthened. Then voices rose, Evelyn's sharp as shattered crystal. You've shamed us, Clara. The Beaumont name, built on faith and fortitude, reduced to tabloid fodder. Clara's reply, steady fire. Faith without love is hollow, mother. Fortitude? You've taught me chains, not strength. The argument spilled onto the steps, Evelyn's pearls swinging like a pendulum of judgment. That woman, Harper trash, corrupting you with her city poisons. Repent or you're no daughter of mine. Clara halted, rain beginning to mist the air, her stance unyielding. She's my salvation. And if that's poison, I'll drink deep. Evelyn recoiled, crossing herself, before turning away in a swirl of skirt, leaving Clara drenched in drizzle and resolve. She emerged into Elsie's arms, sobbing not defeat, but release. It's over. Truly. They fled to the truck, wipers slashing the downpour, Monroe's lights blurring in the rearview. But fate, that capricious spinner, intervened. A roadblock at the town line, sheriff's cruiser flashing blue. Deputy Harlan, a Beaumont distant kin, stepped out, slicker gleaming. Evening, Miss Clara. Got reports of disturbances. Your mother's called a welfare check. Clara gripped the wheel, knuckles white. Disturbance? Or damage control? Harlan's eyes flicked to Elsie, recognition souring his drawl. Miss Harper. Long time. Folks say you're stirring the pot again. The implication hung, laced with the envelope's threat. Elsie leaned forward, voice low thunder. Stirring truth, deputy. Something Monroe's allergic to. Tension crackled. Rain hammered the cab. Harlan hesitated, radio crackling with dispatch, before waving them through. Drive careful. Town's on edge. They pushed north, the interstate a vein of freedom, but the envelope's ghost lingered. In a roadside motel off I-95, neon sign flickering vacancy, room smelling of stale smoke and regret, they confronted it. Clara spread the remnants on the bedspread. Not just photos but letters, Elsie's unsent ones, pilfered somehow from the attic, words of longing weaponized. How? Clara whispered, tracing faded ink. Elsie pieced it. Evelyn's spies, perhaps the maid, or Lila's loose tongue unraveling further. They want us broken, she said, pulling Clara close. But breaks let light in. Intimacy that night was tender warfare. Bodies mapping battlegrounds, kisses sealing wounds. Clara slipped the ring fully on, a vow against the void. New York tomorrow. Start fresh, your events, my designs. No more hiding. Dawn found them entwined, plans sketched on motel stationery. A courthouse wedding in Brooklyn, wildflowers from a rooftop garden. Hope, bruised but breathing, propelled them. Yet betrayal's echo pursued. In Savannah, stopping for gas, Clara's phone buzzed. Unknown number, a voice distorted. Run all you want, deviant. Photos hit the wires at noon. Enjoy the infamy. Panic surged. They sped to a cyber cafe, screens glowing accusations. The images were live, blurred but unmistakable, splashed across a gossip site. Southern scandal. Heiress dumps fiancé for hometown flame. Comments cascaded. Slurs, prayers, schadenfreude from faceless trolls. Monroe's poison digitized, spreading like kudzu online. Clara crumpled, the ring suddenly leaden. I can't. The business, the family. They'll bury us in court, libel suits. Elsie cupped her face, fierce. Let them. We're the story now, not victims but survivors. But Clara pulled away, eyes hollow. Survivors with nothing. I need time. The words landed like the original rejection. Rain in the barn. Elsie watched her drive south alone, back to the cage, the ring left on the dashboard like a discarded heart. Devastated, Elsie continued north, the city swallowing her whole. Months blurred. Events planned with mechanical grace, nights in bars chasing forgetfulness in strangers' arms. The scandal faded, Monroe's fury spent in whispers. But Clara haunted. Letters arriving unsigned. Pleas for forgiveness amid sketches of gowns untethered by tradition. A year later, an invitation. Not wedding but apology. Clara in Vermont building a co-op for queer artisans. Come. Let's rewrite the ending. Elsie packed the old ring in her pocket, ready for the truest vow. Vermont in autumn was a balm Elsie hadn't known she craved. Maples ablaze in crimson and gold, the air crisp with pine and possibility, a far cry from Monroe's humid stranglehold. She arrived at the co-op on a leaf-strewn back road, the cabin cluster emerging like a secret village. Timber frames weathered gentle, smoke curling from chimneys, gardens defiant against the frost. The invitation had been simple, scrawled on artisanal paper. The Green Mountain Collective. Clara. No please, no promises, just coordinates and a date. Elsie parked her rental amid the crunch of gravel, the ring pouch a familiar weight in her coat, heart a wild thing caged too long. Clara waited on the porch of the central lodge, wrapped in a wool shawl the color of river mud, her hair loose and wind-tossed, eyes holding the depth of seasons past. Time had etched her softly lines of laughter amid sorrow, a quiet strength in her stance. You came, she said, voice a bridge over the chasm, stepping down to meet Elsie's hesitant embrace. No rush, no devouring kiss, just the press of bodies familiar as breath releasing years of ache. I wasn't sure. Inside, the collective hummed. Women of all stripes, dyed hair and work boots, canvases splashed with rebellion, looms clacking tales of reclaimed threads. Clara led her through, introducing with pride. Mia the potter with tattoos of forgotten queens, Jordan, the woodworker carving altars to lost loves. This is home now, Clara explained over cider steaming in mugs. No ledgers, no legacies. Just making. Her textiles graced the walls, scarves woven with emerald accents, patterns evoking wild azaleas untamed. Elsie traced one, fingers lingering. You built this. From the ashes. They walked the trails that afternoon, boots sinking into leaf mold, the green mountains rising like benevolent guardians. Conversation flowed halting at first, weather's mercy, the co-op's birth from a single loom in Clara's attic exile. Then deeper, Monroe's fallout, Evelyn's silent stroke 6 months post-scandal, Thomas's quiet remarriage to a debutante. She passed last spring, Clara said of her mother, voice steady but threaded with grief. No deathbed grace. Just a letter. Forgive yourself if not me. Elsie stopped, turning Clara to face her amid birches silver white. And you? Forgiven. Clara's eyes welled, the dam breaking. Not yet. For leaving you at that motel, for choosing silence over storm. She pulled a small box from her pocket, the original proposal velvet, now holding not one ring but two, the emerald mated with a band of woven gold, symbols intertwined. I had it remade. For us. If you'll have the wreckage. Elsie's breath caught, the forest holding sacred hush. She slipped her hand into Clara's, the rings aligning like fate corrected. Wreckage makes the strongest rebuild. The ceremony was intimate, the co-op's heart. A clearing ringed by lanterns, guests a circle of chosen kin. No mayors, no mill workers, just souls who'd walked their own forbidden paths. Vows exchanged under a canopy of falling leaves, Clara's voice clear. I choose you, Elsie Harper, in every season against every tide. Elsie Tears Carving Trails replied. And I you, Clara Beaumont, no more secrets, no more chains. Rings exchanged, kisses sealed with cheers and cider toasts, the mountains echoing approval. But human stories twist even in idle. Winter brought tests. Funding woes for the co-op, a harsh snow burying roads, forcing closeness that chafed old wounds. Clara's designs caught a New York buyer's eye, pulling her south for markets, nights alone stretching Elsie's trust thin. Paranoia whispered. Echoes of Lila's envelope, Thomas's shadow. One blizzard-bound evening Clara returned late, cheeks flushed from city chill, a sketchbook clutched tight. Met an old contact, she said casually, but Elsie's radar pinged. Pages flipped. Designs? Yes, but notes and margins, phone numbers, potential partners for expansion. Jealousy, that green-eyed thief, coiled. Partners? Elsie asked, tone sharper than intended. Clara bristled, shawl shedding snow. Business, Elsie. Not betrayal. The argument ignited, words flying like flakes in gale. Clara accusing Elsie of city cynicism, Elsie retorting with Monroe's ghosts. You left once. What's stopping you now with success beckoning? Clara hurled the sketchbook, pages scattering like accusations. Success without you is hollow. But trust? That's the chain I broke for us. Silence fell heavy as the drifts outside. They parted to cabins, frost-etching windows like tears frozen. Dawn brought regret. Elsie found Clara at the loom, threads half-woven, eyes red-rimmed. I'm scared, Clara admitted, hands idle. Of failing here. Of us becoming another Monroe, love suffocated by fear. Elsie knelt, gathering threads. Then weave us stronger. No more running. Spring thawed the rift, co-op blooming anew. But true test loomed. A letter from Monroe forwarded through lawyers. Evelyn's will, contested by cousins claiming Clara's lifestyle, invalidated her inheritance, the estate, the looms, a fortune in textiles. Court in Georgia beckoned. A siren call to old battlegrounds. Go, Elsie urged, packing Clara's bag. Claim what's yours. I'll hold here. But Clara hesitated, ring glinting. Come with me. Face it together. The drive south was pilgrimage reversed. Interstate unspooling memories. Monroe emerging unchanged. A sepia photograph of grudges. The courthouse on the square buzzed. Riley lawyers in pinstripes, Beaumont kin in church hats, whispers rippling like pond scum. Clara stood tall in the dock, Elsie beside her, hand under the table, a lifeline. Testimonies dragged. Uncles decrying moral decay. A cousin's affidavit laced with anonymous photos venom. Evelyn's lawyer, a silver fox with drawl like molasses, read the codicil. To Clara, my daughter, unbroken and true, the legacy is yours if you claim it whole. The judge ruled swift. Inheritance intact. Lifestyle no bar in modern law. Victory tasted bittersweet. Cheers from allies sparse, glares from the gallery thick. Outside under the oaks, Clara exhaled. It's over. Truly. But Thomas waited by his Bentley, face gaunt. Clara. A word. Elsie tensed, but Clara nodded, approaching alone. Words exchanged low, Thomas's hand on her arm, comfort or claim. He slipped her an envelope, small, before driving off. Back at the co-op, Clara opened it. Not threat but key to a Savannah warehouse, Riley's gift, for new beginnings. No strings. Tears fell as she showed Elsie. Redemption. From him. They wept together. Then loved under the stars, bodies affirming what courts could not. Summer sealed it. Co-op expansion, weddings planned. Elsie's touch on Clara's designs. Ceremonies for lovers like them. Monroe faded to postcard. A scar honored, not hidden. In the clearing, years on, they renewed vows, rings worn thin by time. Love enduring as the mountains. Years wove their tapestry at the Green Mountain Collective. Threads of trial and triumph binding Elsie and Clara into something unbreakable. A life not without storms but weathered with grace. The co-op flourished, a beacon for wanderers. Queer weavers from the Southwest. Artists fleeing urban grind. Elders seeking solace in shared looms. Clara's textiles graced boutiques from Burlington to Boston. Emerald motifs, a subtle signature of roots reclaimed. Elsie expanded her events empire northward, infusing Vermont weddings with Southern soul. River willow arches, magnolia wreaths that whispered of azaleas past. Their cabin, perched on a ridge overlooking valleys of flame and fall, became sanctuary. Evenings by the hearth, journals exchanged like love letters, the rings on their fingers polished talismans. Yet echoes lingered, faint but insistent. Monroe's shadow stretched long. Holiday cards from distant kin, laced with veiled barbs. A documentary on Southern scandals that grazed their story, anonymized but raw. Clara bore it with quiet fire, channeling into designs. Scarves embroidered with fractured chains, symbolizing bonds reforged. Elsie, ever the architect, built buffers. Networking brunches in Manhattan. Collaborations that rooted them deeper in this chosen soil. Their love deepened in layers. Mornings tangled in quilts. Afternoons debating patterns over pie. Nights where touch spoke what words could not. Children came not by blood but choice. A foster daughter, Lena, 10 and fierce, with braids like Clara's and Elsie's wry humor. Adopted after a winter of court vigils echoing their own trials. Lena's arrival cracked them open anew. She arrived wary, suitcases stuffed with foster ghosts. Bruises faded, trust a fragile sprout. Why me? She'd asked that first night. Perched on the cabin's edge, mountains black beyond, Clara knelt, ring-catching firelight. Because families aren't born. They're chosen like loves. Elsie watched from the doorway, heart swelling with the miracle of it. Two women scarred by rejection, now midwives to healing. Lena bloomed slow. Looms her therapy, Lena's small hands weaving potholders into tapestries of color. Stories emerged in fragments. A mother's addiction, aunt's indifference. They said I was trouble, she confessed one dusk. Clay under nails from Mia's wheel. Elsie pulled her close. Troubles just change wearing a rough coat. We all wear it. But peace like mountain air thinned at heights. A call came in the third spring. From Harlan, the deputy, voice gravel with age. Your mother's grave, Clara. Vandals. Towns whispering old hates. Clara's face drained, the co-op's hum fading. Let it lie. But sleep evaded, nightmares of envelopes and church steps. Elsie found her at dawn by the ridge, staring south as if sightlines pierced states. Go, Elsie urged again, Lena asleep inside. Bury the hate proper. Take me. The pilgrimage south was armored this time. Lena in tow, backpack stuffed with sketch pads, the three a unit against the pull. Monroe greeted with tentative thaw. Porches mended, the mill raised to condos, but eyes still lingered at the diner, Mabel long retired, her stool claimed by a girl with rainbow pins. The cemetery lay on the river's bend, Willow's sentinel, Evelyn's stone simple. Beaumont. Rest eternal. Scratches marred it, slurs carved shallow, weeds choking the plot. Clara knelt, Lena beside, hands on earth. She tried in her way, Clara murmured, tracing letters. The letter. It was her vow. Locals gathered uneasy, old mill hands nodding respect, a cousin offering shears for weeds. No pitchforks, just the slow erosion of time on grudges. Thomas appeared last, silvered now with a wife and toddler in tow. Heard you were coming, he said, gravel soft. Brought these. Flowers, magnolias white as surrender. They stood awkward, history's a bridge half burned. No hard feelings, he asked Clara. She smiled, genuine. None left to hold. Lena tugged Elsie's hand, whispering, he looks sad. Elsie squeezed. Sad heals too. Return north brought catharsis. The co-op hosted a vigil that summer. Lanterns for lost loves, stories shared under stars. Clara unveiled an installation. Woven shrouds for the silenced, emerald threads binding fractures. Elsie planned the rite. Unity not in candles but communal looms. Participants weaving panels into a vast banner. Lena contributed a square. Stick figures hand in hand, mountains behind. For the ones who stayed, she said, needle fierce. Autumn deepened bonds. A storm hit hard, winds howling like Monroe's ghosts. Roof leaking over the hearth. Huddled close, Lena between, they rode it out, tales trading places. Clara's barn rain, Elsie's city dawns, Lena's shelter nights. Storms pass, Clara said as thunder rolled, leaving clearer skies. Dawn proved it. Valley washed vivid, air electric with renewal. Winter's gift was Legacy's turn. Clara's fabrics hit a Paris show. Scouts buzzing for expansion. Elsie fielded offers. A Hamptons firm seeking her touch for queer galas. Temptation tugged. Glitter of scale against co-op intimacy. Over solstice cider they weighed it. Go if it calls, Elsie said. We'll weave it in. Clara shook head. Not without you. Us. Lena eavesdropping piped. All three. Promise. Rings touched, vows silent but iron. Spring circled back to beginnings. On their anniversary they retraced Vermont trails. Lena scouting ahead with binoculars. At the clearing, picnic spread, pecan pie nodding south. Clara pulled 2 envelopes. Deeds to co-op land gifted collective. Ours forever. Elsie added hers. A planner's blueprint for a wedding wing. Ceremonies for the mending. Lena grinned, tossing leaves. Can I plan one? For you too again. The renewal was whimsy. Lena's touches, fairy lights, wildflower crowns. Guess the co-op kin, mountains witnesses. Vows evolved. Through rejections and returns, Clara said. I choose you. Elsie echoed. With rings and wreckage forever. Kiss amid cheers, Lena whooping, the banner unfurled. Fractures now whole. Monroe faded to fond scar, lessons etched. Love defies not by destruction but persistence. against standard societal selves betrayed. In their cabin, years layering like good soil, Elsie and Clara built not empire but haven. Lena grew, weaving her own threads. And the rings, worn luminous, reminded. Proposals rejected bloom in returns unexpected. Freedom, after all, is the truest vow.